Chapter 1. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in the world haven't had the advantages that you've had. He didn't say any more, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way, and I understood he meant a great deal more than that. Okay, I'm going to stop here. What I want you to know is this is, as you can see, first person, and our narrator here is, even though he hasn't told us, his name is Nick Carraway, and he's a young man. He's in his late 20s, or no, at this point, I guess he's 30. And he is starting off the book talking about some advice that his father gave him, talking about advantages. And normally, when we think about advantages, we think of where a person was born, maybe the country they were born in, the family, and we think about financial advantages as well. Okay, which is a big conflict in the book, as I wrote on Google Classroom and I said in class, is the idea of those with money versus those without money, or even those who are what we could think of as old money versus those with new money. And so we start out the book with this very idea. So obviously we can see that this is an important conflict and theme in the book. He didn't say any more. I'm inclined to reserve all judgments. So what he's saying here is that he tries not to judge. But does he? So let's see if he is as non-judgmental as he says he is. A habit that has opened many curious natures to me, and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. So what he's saying here is, first, on the one hand, he doesn't judge. Okay, he reserves judgments. And because he does this, really boring people come up to him and bore him. So obviously he's making a judgment, right? So immediately we should be a little bit suspicious of our narrator here. Anytime you have first-person narrator, it's just imagine a friend that tells you a story and someone else might tell the same story, but they might tell it slightly different. So everyone has their own perspective. So that's one thing that you have to be careful of when you have first-person narrator. The abnormal, so the not normal, the abnormal mind is quick to detect and attach itself to this quality when it appears in a normal person. And so it came about that in college I was unjustly accused of being a politician, which is not a good thing, right? If someone accuses you of being a politician, you're probably being a liar, someone that can't be trusted. Because I was privy, so I was made, they were bringing me secrets. To be privy to something is to be let in on secrets. To those secret griefs of wild, unknown men. Most of the confidences were unsought, so he's not looking for these meetings with these boring people. Frequently, I feign sleep, preoccupation, or hostile levity, so he pretends to be asleep or busy. Or this is an oxymoron, hostile, you know what that means, like aggressive, and levity, like lightheartedness. So imagine someone who's sort of gritting their teeth, pretending to be happy when they're really not. Hostile levity, oxymoron. When I realized by some unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was quivering on the horizon, for the intimate revelations, a revelation is like a big unloading of a secret or an idea of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppression. So when young men share these big ideas, these big secrets, they're usually just ripping ideas off from other people. Reserving judgment is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested, and I snobbishly repeated, a sense of the fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth. So what that means is he keeps hoping. So he doesn't judge people. Why? Because he keeps hoping that there's someone out there who is going to prove him wrong, and that there are good people out there, and there are people worthy of listening to. Um, let's go on. And after boasting this way of my tolerance, I come to the admission it has a limit. Conduct or behavior may be founded on the hard rock or the wet marshes, like a pond. So, behavior, think of someone's behavior that can be built with a strong foundation or not a strong foundation, like a pond. Okay, so say you have a weak upbringing, so you don't have strong morals or strong foundation. But after a certain point, I don't care what it's founded on. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt I wanted the world to be in a uniform and in a sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more riotous excursions with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Okay, so something happened last autumn in the East. He was in New York, and something happened that sort of traumatized him. And now he wants people to be at moral tension. He wants them to be in a uniform, to conform, to have certain rules, to act a certain way, to have morals, to be good people. I wanted no more riotous or crazy trips with privileged glimpses into the human heart. Okay, so we're not really sure what happened here, but it sounds like it was quite crazy, and whatever these privileged glimpses into the human heart, whatever that meant. So something happened. And then here is a very important paradox. The whole book is sort of founded on this paradox. Only Gatsby, the man who gave his name to this book, was exempt, so not included, exempt from my reaction. So even though he doesn't like what Gatsby represents, he seems to have affection for Gatsby. And this is the paradox. So Gatsby represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. So on the one hand, Gatsby is exempt from this feeling he has, but on the other hand, Gatsby represents something that he hates. And this is a paradox when you have two contradictory ideas that nevertheless kind of make sense. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with that flabby impressionability which is dignified under the name of creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope. This word is extremely important in understanding Gatsby. Hope. A romantic readiness such as I have never found in another person and which it is not likely I shall ever find again. No, Gatsby turned out all right in the end. It is what preyed or hunted on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams, that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and the short-winded elations of men. So, first little bit of the book, we find out that Gatsby, he had some kind of relationship with Gatsby. Sounds like a friendship, maybe. And on the one hand, Gatsby, he seemed to like Gatsby, but then he hates everything Gatsby represents. So that is a little bit confusing. So we're going to have to go on in the book to find out what this means. Then this part about the earthquake makes Gatsby sound like he's being described in supernatural terms. Okay? And the way Nick goes on about Gatsby makes him kind of sound almost like a superhero, like he's not a real person, which he is. Okay, let's go on. So now he's talking about his family. My family have been prominent, well-to-do people, so important, noteworthy, in the middle western city for 3 generations. So this is Minneapolis. This is where he's from. The Caraways are something of a clan, and we have a tradition. We're descended from the Dukes of Buccleuch. Okay, so this is a tradition. But the actual founder of my line was my grandfather's brother, who came here in '51, sent a substitute to the Civil War, and started the wholesale hardware business that my father carries on today. So they have this idea that they're descended like ooh la la from the Dukes of Buccleuch. Wow. But actually it's a big lie. All right. And what happened in the Civil War? His great uncle said, I don't really want to go to the Civil War, so I'm going to pay somebody to go in my place, and I'm going to stay here and make lots of money. And here we go. This is the first hint of this idea of the American dream, that it's kind of founded on perhaps a lot of falsehoods, lies. I never saw this great uncle, but I'm supposed to look like him. Okay, so why would the author include this line here? Maybe Nick shares some similarities with this great uncle. So we know from here that that's kind of cowardly, isn't it, to send somebody to your place in war, and that he wanted to stay here and make money, which is what they did. With reference to a hard-boiled painting that hangs in my father's office. I graduated from New Haven in 1915, just a quarter of a century after my father, and a little later I participated in that delayed Teutonic migration known as the Great War, and this just means that a lot of people were displaced during this time. I enjoyed the counter raid so thoroughly I came back restless. Instead of being the warm center of the world, the Middle West now seemed like the ragged edge of the universe, so I decided to go east and learn the bond business. Everybody I knew was in the bond business. So this is stocks and bonds. So the 1920s, the stock market was going up, 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 up. Lots of money to be made in the East, New York specifically. So I supposed it could support one more single man. All my aunts and uncles talked it over as if they were choosing a prep school for me, and finally said, "Why, yes," with very grave and hesitant faces. Father agreed to finance me for a year, and after various delays I came east, permanently I thought, in the spring of 22. The practical thing was to find rooms in the city, but it was a warm season, and I had just left a country of wide lawns and friendly trees, so when a young man at the office suggested we take a house together in a commuting town, it sounded like a great idea. He found the house, a weather-beaten cardboard bungalow, at $80 a month, but at the last minute the firm ordered him to Washington, and I went out to the country alone. I had a dog. At least I had him a few days until he ran away, and an old Dodge and a Finnish woman who made my bed and cooked breakfast and muttered Finnish woman to herself over the electric stove. It was lonely for a day or so until one morning some man, more recently arrived than I, stopped me on the road. "How do you get to West Egg Village?" he asked helplessly. I told him, and as I walked on, I was lonely no longer. I was a guide, a pathfinder, an original settler. He had casually conferred on me the freedom of the neighborhood. And so with the sunshine and the great bursts of leaves growing on the trees, just as things grow in fast movies, I had that familiar conviction or belief that life was beginning over again with the summer. So we've gone into the past here. This is all one big flashback now, the rest of the book. Okay? So he starts off telling us about his relationship with Gatsby, his own family, and now we've gone back into the summer. There was so much to read, for one thing, and so much fine health to be pulled down out of the young, breath-giving air. I bought a dozen volumes on banking and credit and investment securities, and they stood on my shelf in red and gold like new money from the mint, promising to unfold the shining secrets that only Midas, think of King Midas, the story of King Midas touching everything and it turned gold, and Morgan Maecenas knew. Morgan at banking, finance, and Maecenas, this is a reference to a Roman god. And I had the high intention of reading many other books besides. I was rather literary in college. One year I wrote a series of I'm going to stop here because actually this is where the other class should be starting. So I'm going to stop here now and then start another video.